Story 1. Constant pain in your body should be taken seriously to avoid more complications in the future. You never know if there could be an underlying condition with those pains. Story 2. The absolutely abysmal state of our software infrastructure. We've built up our civilization on unimaginably complex pieces of software with even more complex interactions between them, and the quality standard is just above it works for the vast majority of it. We are in for a very bad time if we don't get on this. CrowdStrike was an example, and not even a particularly far-reaching one. Story 3. As an Australian, the sun, and more specifically sunburn or tanning, is notable. If I'm not mistaken, we're number 1 in the world for skin cancer cases, partially owing to our huge ozone hole. Far too many people get skin cancer and ignore it or don't get their skin checked, which could catch it early. Story 4. Noise pollution. After spending time in a quiet place, coming back to the motorcycles, barking dogs, and leaf blowers of the neighborhood is so jarring. Eats away at you. Story 5. Alcohol use. There are a lot of people struggling through life, depressed and anxious, who haven't realized that it's due to their habitual alcohol intake. It's insidious. They think the alcohol is helping with the stress and depression, but it's actually causing it. The anxiety and depression last much longer than the effects of the alcohol, often weeks, making it incredibly easy not to make that connection. I am not saying that anxiety and depression are solely caused by alcohol. That's a ridiculous assertion, especially since I am a person who has chronic anxiety and depression due to genetics. Alcohol makes those problems infinitely worse. And there are many people who think they need to drink to deal with their anxiety and depression, when alcohol is what is causing or exacerbating these issues. Story 6. We are running out of helium. It is a limited resource that is extracted from the ground when drilling for fossil fuels. It is created through radioactive decay and is a non-renewable resource. We are literally putting an impossible-to-replace resource into party balloons and effectively releasing it into space. Many serious industrial, medical, and scientific endeavors require it, and there is no good alternative on Earth once it is gone. Story 7. I scrolled way down and didn't see it here. I really try to limit the amount of plastic that I use and discard, but even then, it's a lot. Sure, bring your reusable shopping bag to the grocery store, but what's that worth when absolutely everything is encased in mostly non-recyclable plastic, often for no identifiable reason? We are leaving a toxic time bomb for every generation that comes after us. Story 8. The current trend of pretty much all influencers and content creators being sponsored by gambling companies is concerning. Gambling addiction is becoming a widespread issue among youths, and it's starting to be a problem in schools because it's so easily accessible and normalized by these influencers, whose target audience is mostly young people. It doesn't help that esports and loot boxes are ingrained in video games, which are also featured as normal in their content. This is a disaster waiting to happen for this generation. Story 9. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. It's not just about paying attention in school. It affects most tasks we do as humans, including social interactions, relationships, friendships, and more. Untreated attention deficit hyperactivity disorder carries increased risks of obesity, suicide, substance use, unplanned pregnancies, poverty, depression and anxiety, personality disorders, increased likelihood of experiencing trauma, car accidents, school problems, job problems, broken relationships, and much more. And it's by far the most treatable mental health condition we have. Story 10. Sudden changes in behavior, yours or others. If you have known someone a long time and they are acting out of character, do not let it pass unnoticed. If it is nothing, you might feel a bit embarrassed, but if it is something and you do not check in, that is a lot worse. Be safe. Story 11. Speaking as a climate scientist and professor at a university, climate change is a serious issue. We learned quickly during COVID-19 that even when nearly the entire world halted a majority of travel, it barely made a blip on the emissions data. We are in serious trouble, and buying LED bulbs for your house won't fix it. I have a carbon dioxide monitor I carry with me, and even outside it has been registering over 430 parts per million. Story 12. Alcohol addiction, and any other addiction, is serious. It's legal, so it's okay to be drunk every day. Now, what if someone did heroin every day? Not so fun. Huh? Being sober is so hard when everyone thinks alcohol is fun. No, it's not. It's killing people. No more than 3 days ago, I was performing CPR on a 40-year-old man who had alcoholic cardiomyopathy. The other one, 36 years old, died after vomiting blood, all in one night. They weren't homeless people. It may kill you no matter if you drink a cheap whiskey or a $500 one. Story 13. Lack of driver education and skill, prevalence of distracted drivers, etc. I have only been driving for 20 years, and in that time, the average competency of drivers on the road has gotten much worse. Of course, in the United States, we have minimal public transportation outside of major cities, and workers have to keep working so anyone with a pulse can get a driver's license. Story 14. Caesarean sections. They saw you in half while you're wide awake and then expect you to start taking care of a new life a few hours later. American society thinks this is normal and always says, "At least the baby is healthy." Story 15. The downsides to valuing the amount of work completed with respect to time over the quality of said work. I guess I can't exactly expect this to fall on listening ears when all that matters is revenue, right? Story 16. Unexplained changes in your body. So many people posting on Reddit, "Hey, check out this weird thing that just appeared on my skin." And the answer is always inevitably, "Please go see a doctor. You have serious concerns." Story 17. Simple personal protective equipment. Eye protection and hearing protection are so cheap. A former coworker was visiting a designer's office and accidentally left his safety glasses on. The designer was playing with a thing we called a filter, later determined to be a class action lawsuit. One of the metal legs popped off while in the designer's hand and lodged itself in my coworker's safety glasses. Of course, the same applies to steel-toed footwear. Story 18. Getting high daily. Weed is seen by many as having no harms but can be very psychologically addictive. Daily use causes anxiety, depression, a change in personality, worse sleep, and many other issues depending on your body. I really expect that once more studies are conducted about the effects of weed on the body, it won't be considered as harmless. Story 19. Driving. People seem to forget that they are driving a piece of metal capable of going over 100 kilometers per hour. It's literally heavy machinery, and that is why you need a license to use it. Story 20. The environment. Scientists are screaming at the top of their lungs that the planet is about to very rapidly descend into unlivable conditions. We should be rampaging through political institutions with pitchforks and torches and forcing them to pass strict legislation to fix these issues, but people act like it is nothing to worry about, and soon we will all be dying of heat, thirst, and hunger. Story 21. Invisible illnesses. Just because someone looks like they are not affected by serious medical problems does not mean they are fine. Plenty of people just try their best to even show up, only to get put down because they are not the same as everyone else. Story 22. So many things. Elections, especially at the municipal level. Attacks against the free press. Concentration of conglomerates owning huge swathes of industry. How our goods are made and the exploitation of the third world. The processed nature of food and its health impacts. Even fresh food is deteriorating. Story 23. The stigma of people with disabilities. I've been a woman with cerebral palsy pretty much all my life, and there are a lot of times when people in public will just look at me, even essentially treating me like I'm an alien. It's harder to make friends. Story 24. Alcohol and cigarettes. Just because something is legal doesn't mean you should buy it and use it. There is literally nothing positive about any of this. Story 25. Burnout. The only cure for burnout is absolute rest. But the way our society is structured does not allow that. We simply do not have enough time to actually recover and end up paying with our physical and mental health. Story 26. Our healthcare system as a whole. People's lives shouldn't be for profit. The stigma around mental health and medications for treatment. Access to mental health care. Medication costs even with insurance. Story 27. Overexercising. People take it as a badge of honor when individuals are in the gym 3 hours a day, but there can be some detrimental effects of that. Depending on the intensity of your exercise, along with other factors such as diet and sleep or recovery, you can develop rhabdomyolysis, which can be deadly. Story 28. Making homes wheelchair-friendly. I work in accessibility consulting, and residential properties consistently perform the worst for accessibility and adaptability. With an aging population and more people with disabilities having better outcomes to live independently, this is one of the biggest issues that is not being talked about. One of the problems is that developers might not know what accessibility is, or the standards they use are not adequate. Here in Canada, lending and financing programs for builders are using accessibility standards from 2012, and sometimes even from the 2000s. There is a 2023 version of the standards. Instead, they choose to use the one from 12 years ago. Think about how different the world was back then. As a result, there are brand new buildings slated for completion in 2024 or 2025, with no or inadequate accessibility provisions being made. The residential developer clients do not want to improve. Every recommendation I make gets pushback, with the reason being your suggestion surpasses what the 2012 standards say we need and is therefore unnecessary. So housing continues to be built with a lack of wheelchair accessible or adaptable provisions. Remember, there is a difference between accessible and adaptable. Adaptable means easy to renovate if the need arises. With 1 in 4 Canadians self-identifying as having some sort of disability and an upcoming seniors population boom, this is going to bite us for sure. Yet nobody seems to care. On a personal note, I am a wheelchair user myself. I live in a place with subpar accessibility. I cannot move because there is no new accessible housing available, and whatever I find is priced out for me. If I apply for subsidized accessible housing, the wait list is many years long. I know someone who has been waiting for over 10 years. Story 29. Advertising. The idea that necessities like food, water, and shelter are treated as premiums or luxuries, rather than basic things you need. A haircut costs over $40 for a basic cut. Story 30. If you ever see a bunch of flashing lights, floaters, or a dark curtain or spot in your vision, do not wait. Go to the emergency room, as it could be a retina detachment, and the sooner you get there, the better the odds of repairing it. Story 31. In the United States, the long-term effects of recent Supreme Court decisions overturning Chevron and weakening the executive branch. Edit. In general, Dobbs has received a lot of attention because it took effect immediately, but the major questions doctrine and overturning Chevron will have a long-term effect on the federal government's ability to regulate corporate activity. Story 32. Truckers are taught not to change lanes to let people merge onto the highway unless absolutely safe and necessary. The safest thing a truck can do is not move at all. Since we have to move, the next safest thing is to maintain our speed and lane of travel. If you are in a car and you're merging onto the highway and you find yourself shoulder to shoulder with a big rig, make up your mind and either slow down and get in behind or get on the gas and jump in ahead of us. The number of people who ride next to me in the merge lane until they run out of merge lane and end up riding along the shoulder is mind-numbing. A big truck can't stop fast and can't go fast. A little car can stop fast and go fast. Pick one. Also, don't change lanes 10 feet in front of my front bumper. You're playing with your life and mine and everyone else who gets caught in the crossfire. Also, don't ride along next to us on the highway. If one of our massive, steel-belted tires blows and the tread comes through your windshield, it's most likely game over. Slow down or pass. That's it. I'm done. That's it. Story 33. Any random strong pain or strong discomfort in the body, most people would just ignore it when it could be a sign of something bad. If you feel a lot of pain or discomfort, get yourself checked. It may save your life. Stay safe. Story 34. I would love to see more of a genuine conversation around men's issues because there are a lot of standards in our society that hurt men. For example, the fact that male sexual assault isn't taken as seriously and is still openly joked about is wrong, but pretty much the only time I hear it brought up is as a rebuttal to detract from conversation around women's issues. It's possible to care about feminism and men's issues. In my lifetime, I would really like to see a genuine men's movement pop up that isn't just focused on clashing with women's movements. I've seen some promising initiatives, but nothing significant yet. Fingers crossed. Story 35. COVID. Almost everyone is acting like the threat is completely over, And meanwhile, we are learning more and more about the way it absolutely decimates multiple organs and systems. Story 36. Child abuse. When people hear of it, we all say, "Oh, that's horrible." But it's so widespread and there is very little being done to decrease it, especially in the foster care system. Story 37. Diabetes is a terrible condition that, if not controlled, will impact many organs and pretty much cripple you. Many believe that taking metformin or insulin will keep it under control. While it helps, diet and exercise are also part of the equation. Knowing your hemoglobin A1C, checking your glucose, and knowing what triggers a major spike in glucose will make a difference and keep diabetes controlled. Story 38. Environmental problems. When there is no food to be purchased, the rest of our problems will seem minor. When the heat and humidity outdoors become lethal and the power grid fails from overdemand and poor investment in infrastructure, other problems will seem minor. When aquifers are poisoned or depleted to the point of being unusable and you can't get water to flush the toilet, let alone drink, all the other issues out there will seem minor. I am not actually trying to minimize current issues and suffering, but when the tipping points are exceeded and things get real, we will be longing for the good old days when the kids aren't starving to death and grandma isn't dying of heat stroke or dehydration.